few Sundays, we've been in a message series about the songs of Christmas, where we've been looking at these songs, and that's what they are. They are songs that are contained in the opening 2 chapters of the Gospel of Luke. There are 4 songs, and so it really makes kind of a nice framework for the 4 Sundays of Advent. So 2 Sundays ago, we looked at the Song of Zechariah. Last week, we looked at the Angels' Song, Glory to God in the highest. And then this morning, we're going to look at Mary's song. And this is her response to the message that she has received about the role she will be playing in the birth of the Christ child. And so we're going to look at this response, this Song of Mary, and we're going to look at it from the perspective of what is the foundation for her praise. What is the foundation for her worship that is encapsulated in this song? Because there are some elements there that ought to still be foundational for our worship and for our praise today. So, from Luke chapter 1, beginning there in verse 46, "And Mary said, My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. From now on all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. His mercy extends to those who fear him from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but he has sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, even as he said to our fathers." What a wonderful song, what a wonderful encapsulation of Mary's praise. Well, again, I want us to think about what is foundational here in this Song of Mary, to her praise, to her worship of God, as a response to his initiative, to his activity in her life. And there are 3 things I want to call your attention to this morning. The first is that Mary's praise is founded upon God's choice of her. God's choice of her. That God, out of everyone he could have used, has chosen to use her. And so that is where her praise, that is where this song begins. And the same is going to be true of you and me. You know, God chooses us for certain purposes, for certain roles, for certain tasks that he has not chosen or tasked anyone else with. That there is, and I say this repeatedly on Sunday mornings, that you and I have a tailor-made purpose in God. And so Mary recognizes that God has chosen her, and that then begins the process of her worship. That is one of the first elements, foundations for her praise of God. Now, I want to park here for just a moment, because I want us to think about what is contained in her praise of God for choosing her. Because for me anyway, this has a couple of really meaningful and significant takeaways, just this one element of her praise. First is this, that she says, all generations will call me blessed. All generations will call me blessed. So she sees herself as blessed. Now, I want us to think for just a moment about how you and I use that term today. Blessed literally means here in Luke chapter 1 the same thing it means in the Beatitudes that Jesus gave in both Luke and Matthew. Blessed means to be just completely excited, to be overjoyed, to be exuberantly happy. That's what blessed means. And so when she says, all generations will call me blessed, means all generations will look upon me and think about my joy, my enthusiasm, my exuberance, my just overwhelming happiness as a result of what God has chosen me for. Now, I want you to contrast that. When you and I tend to use the word blessed in thinking about ourselves, it tends to be used as a measure of how comfortable we are. So, for example, if you walk into someone's home and they have a beautiful home and, maybe, it's been well decorated and, got all the new things and all the niceties to it, and you say to that individual, wow, what a beautiful home you have. They might say, well, I'm blessed. If you say to someone who you think has like just the perfect family, right? The perfect home life, and just wonderful kids, and everybody's behaving, and all is good, and you compliment them on that, they might look back and respond to you and say, well, we're just blessed. Or if you look at someone that has been highly successful in their career, and they have achieved a certain level financially and all of this good thing, and you say something to them, and they might then respond back, and they might say, well, I'm just blessed. That's how we tend to use the term. Meaning, I'm really comfortable. Meaning, not only are needs met, but wants have been provided for. That is how we tend to use that word in our conversation, oftentimes as believers. Now, I want you to contrast that with what the blessed term means as Mary is expressing it here. She is anything but comfortable. She is unmarried, but to be pregnant. She has, in terms of material things, nothing. She is a nobody from nowhere. And in fact, next Sunday we'll look at the Song of Simeon, where Simeon, holding the Christ child, will look at Mary and say, your heart will be pierced because of him. So the term blessed here is not Mary expressing praise or worship or response to God because she's comfortable. She is able to express this overwhelming joy and exuberance and happiness in a position of being completely uncomfortable. To having everything from an earthly perspective not be as it should be. Now, that's a takeaway. We need to park ourselves right there. And we need to be able to say as believers, blessed doesn't mean I'm comfortable. Blessed doesn't mean I've got not only every need, but a bunch of wants satisfied. Blessed is not that. Blessed is the fact that God is involved in my life, regardless of what the circumstances may be. That's what blessed means. And so when Mary's praise comes from the fact that God has chosen her and that she considers herself blessed, man, that's so counterintuitive to where many of us park ourselves when we think about and when we use that term. One other takeaway from this, not only focusing upon how the word blessed is used here, but notice that her response to God choosing her for a task, God choosing her for a purpose, God choosing her to do something, is something that she considers to be such a privilege that the creator of the universe, the one who hung the stars and put the galaxies in motion, has chosen her for this role, makes her completely overjoyed. I want you to think about that response in comparison to sometimes how we as believers respond when we are asked to assume a role or to take on a responsibility in service to the Lord. When I was growing up, one of the things that I used to watch when it would come on TV as a kid were all the little Winnie the Pooh specials. I'm dating myself, I realize this. No wonder my hair is gray. Winnie the Pooh. And, Winnie the Pooh, like all those little animated TV specials, had the same cast of characters every special, every time, every episode. And you may recall that, if you're familiar with Winnie the Pooh, there was one character whose demeanor was always the same, regardless of what was going on, and that was Eeyore. Everybody remember Eeyore? It didn't make any difference how much honey was in the honey pot. Didn't make much difference about how many honey pots Winnie the Pooh got out of the tree and all that kind of stuff. Eeyore was just going to be a downer. Eeyore was just going to be negative. No matter how positive the circumstance was, no matter how bright the sun was shining, with Eeyore it was always gloom and doom and just a whole neg vibe coming from Eeyore. I want to say this, and I'm challenging all of us, myself included. When we are asked to do a service, when a need for ministry comes our way, we can either respond like Mary did and say, you know what, I'm seeing this as a privilege, and that's an awesome joy for me. Or we can have an Eeyore response to it. Well, I don't understand why other people can't do this. You with me? Well, I've done that for 17 years. I reckon I'll do it one more. I don't understand why the pastor doesn't ask so-and-so to do this job. He comes to me all the time. I want you to know the 845 group responded so much better to my Eeyore invitation than what you guys did. But you get the point? When there are needs in front of us, when there are jobs to be done, when there are responsibilities that need to be fulfilled in service to the Lord, whether it's through church or whether it's through other things, believers too many times give an Eeyore response. Why is that? Mary can say something to us today. Mary can speak to us today. That when you and I have the opportunity to minister in the name of God for the cause of Christ, that is a high, high privilege that we have been afforded, in which we should take exuberant joy. So where Mary's praise begins is in the fact that God has chosen her for something that is completely discomforting. The second thing that is the foundation or second element of her praise is God's character. God's character. I pulled out 3 words. There are a couple more in this passage that speak about God's character. God is holy. That means separated, absolutely pure, sacred. God is mighty. That's used a couple times here in Mary's praise, meaning God is completely able. There's nothing that He cannot do that He purposes to accomplish. God is merciful, meaning that He has the abundant resources to meet any need. Any need. He is merciful. That's what that term merciful means in that context there in Luke chapter 1. And so not only has God chosen her, and that it elicits praise, but the basic character of the one who has chosen her, God Himself, is a basis of praise. And God's character is the same today as it was 2 millennia ago when this was penned. He does not change. He is still holy. He is still mighty. He is still merciful. And seeking daily to demonstrate those characteristics in your life and in my life and in our situations and in my situation. And so she praises God because of his character. It's a wonderful expression about who God is in her life. Third element of praise, third foundation for Mary's praise is God's consistency. God's consistency. And that's really where this song kind of ends. That's kind of the second half of the song, if you will, where Mary looks back at what God is doing in her life. God has always been doing. That the way in which God is going to use her and the purpose for which he is going to use her has always been in concert with his purpose in the past. And how he has used people and how he has overseen and nurtured and nourished and taken care of Israel. Going all the way back, according to the song, to Abraham and coming forward to her time. To her time. God's consistency. God's consistency. Inc. magazine, that's I-N-C magazine, is a business magazine. It's also online. And anyway, a couple months ago, there was a business management guru who goes around and speaks at conferences, and anyway, he has a column on the Inc. website. But he wrote about the critical value of consistency in business. Now, I'm going to use this, and then I'm going to do what I do on occasion. I'll take something like this, and then we're going to submerge it in the waters of baptism and bring it back up and see that this has something to say to us about the consistency that we benefit from that is in God. But anyway, he said that as a business, as an executive, as a manager, as an employee, whatever strata, whatever level one might be in, there is tremendous value in consistency. And he said there are 5 important outcomes to consistency. And he says, first, that consistency establishes a reputation. It gives you or a company a track record. And so whatever it is that you do consistently, whatever I do consistently, that solidifies the reputation that we have. Secondly, he says consistency makes us relevant and reliable. And so if we're consistent, people know that we're reliable, that they can depend upon us. Third thing that comes out of consistency is that it maintains purpose, mission, message. That if a company is consistent, for example, in its product, then that it maintains its purpose, its mission, and its message. Fourth thing is it builds trust. You know, when you and I are consistent, then folks, can trust that about us. And then the fifth and final thing is that because of those firstborn, consistency establishes influence. It creates influence. I thought those were pretty good, pretty important outcomes in the value of consistency just in a corporate culture. Now let's baptize all of that. We'll hold it underwater for a few seconds. We'll bring it back up because I want to suggest to you that in many ways that same thing happens with us because of God's consistency. And in many ways, that's what the Song of Mary is celebrating here. God has a reputation in this song. God has a track record in this song of using ordinary folks in extraordinary ways, of doing the incredible. And because he consistently has done that in the past, Mary then can understand that he is going to consistently do it in the present and in the future, and now in this time through her. This song reminds us that God has consistently had a message of mercy and of might and of commitment to Israel. And thus everything that is happening and being proclaimed here in Luke chapter 1 is consistent with that message and with that purpose that God had all the way back to Abraham. God could be trusted, this song reminds us, because of this pattern with his people. And now, because of that, Mary can trust him in her role and in her life. And because of that, God now has a tremendous influence on her. On her. And she praises that. She praises that. And so because of that consistency of purpose, of mission, of message, of mercy, of might, of reliability, Mary's all in. She's all in. Completely invested herself in this plan of God's to use her. Again, I end where I began. The elements that are foundational to Mary's praise here in Luke 1 still available as foundation for our praise today. God has chosen you. Don't forget that. God has uniquely equipped, gifted, purposed you, the creator of the universe. You. That's worthy of praise. God's character has not changed, and it never will. It's worthy of praise. God is consistent. You can trust him. You can invest yourself in him. That's worthy of praise. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, we just thank you that you give to our lives purpose because you choose us. And that is a blessed place to be. And so heaven forbid we be an Eeyore when the needs of ministry and the opportunities to serve come our way. Lord, that your character, your holiness, your mightiness, your mercy, still extended, still gifted to us. And Lord, that you are consistent, you're unchanging in your message, in your purpose, in your character. And because of that, we can trust you. And you can be, and want to be, the, not a, but the influence in our lives. And what an awesome foundation for praise that is for us, as we saw in Mary. And so may we praise you, recognizing and realizing these things this day. In Jesus' name we pray.